When you go quiet longer than she expected, you create a shift she never prepared herself for. Most men fold within hours, sometimes minutes, because they're driven by emotion, fear, and the desperate need to fix things instantly. But when you choose silence, real silence, that lasts longer than her ego calculated, something powerful begins to happen. You break the pattern she relied on. Every relationship, every connection, even casual talking stages build predictable dynamics. She texts, you respond. She pulls away, you chase. She shows a little attention, you get excited. She withdraws, you panic. This predictability is what gives her emotional control, even if she's not consciously aware of it. But the moment you disrupt that cycle, the moment you no longer move the way she expects, she loses the psychological advantage she once held over you. Your extended silence isn't just the absence of words. It's the absence of validation, the absence of energy, the absence of emotional attention that she assumed would always be available. She got used to the idea that no matter how she acted, whether she ignored you, disrespected you, or pulled back, you would still be there waiting, ready to respond as soon as she decided to reach out. But now she's experiencing something she didn't see coming, the discomfort of not knowing where she stands with you anymore. And that discomfort quickly turns into anxiety because silence is a language, and it's a language she can't control. See, when you go silent, you remove her ability to manage your emotions. She can't read you. She can't predict you. She can't influence you. And for someone who expects attention, that loss of power becomes deeply unsettling. She starts asking herself questions she never worried about before. Why isn't he reaching out? Did he lose interest? Did he find someone else? Did he get tired of me? Did I push too far? These thoughts don't appear when you go quiet for a short time, but when your silence lasts longer than she anticipated, it forces her into a mental space she never planned to enter. And the truth is, she's not thinking these things because she loves you or wants a relationship with you. Sometimes she doesn't even know what she wants. But she does know she liked having your attention. She liked being in control of the pace. She liked knowing she could step away and you'd still be there. Women don't usually fear losing a man. They fear losing the version of themselves they got to be when that man was around. And when your silence stays consistent and strong, that version of themselves disappears. She no longer feels admired. She no longer feels desired. She no longer feels like she has someone waiting on her. And that shift hits harder than people realize. Your silence also forces her to face something she avoided: accountability. When a woman mistreats a man, dismisses him, plays games, or pulls back, she expects him to react in ways that reinforce her superiority. But when you don't react, when you don't chase, when you don't fall apart emotionally, she is left sitting with the consequences of her actions. And that's a place very few people can sit comfortably. She realizes she miscalculated. She realizes she overplayed her hand. She realizes you aren't as attached as she believed. And that realization is where regret begins. But your silence is only powerful when it's real, when it comes from a man who's choosing himself, not punishing her. Because the moment you stop responding to her emotional games, you take your power back. The moment you stop being predictable, you become unforgettable. And the moment you stay silent longer than she expected, her mind begins to spiral in ways she never saw coming. That's the strength of silence. It forces truth to surface. When a woman finally feels the weight of your silence, something deeper happens beneath the surface. She is forced to confront the value you once brought into her life. This is the part most men never understand. When you give attention freely, she doesn't see it as value. She sees it as normal. She sees it as expected. She sees it as something she can get anytime she wants. But the moment that attention disappears, the moment your presence becomes unavailable, She starts to realize what your presence meant. Silence has a way of highlighting everything she overlooked, everything she dismissed, and everything she took for granted. Your energy wasn't just messages and calls. It wasn't just presence. It was stability. It was warmth. It was predictability. It was knowing someone cared. It was the comfort of knowing that no matter how she acted, there was a man on the other side who still showed up. People don't appreciate what they have when they feel certain it will always be there. It's only when that presence is gone, truly gone, that they start to see it clearly. Your silence becomes a spotlight. It illuminates the difference between a man who gives his heart and a world that often only wants his attention without giving anything in return. As she starts remembering the small things you did that went unnoticed. She remembers how you listened, how you showed up, how you cared in ways most people never cared for her. She remembers the nights you were there when no one else was, the conversations that made her feel understood, the way you wanted to build something real. She remembers all of it, but now she's remembering it in the darkness of your silence. And that darkness makes everything feel heavier. She begins replaying the moments where she pushed you away, acted cold, or treated you like an option, thinking it wouldn't matter. She assumed you'd stay. She assumed you'd tolerate it. She assumed you wouldn't have the strength to walk away. When a woman realizes she misjudged a man's value, a man's heart, a man's patience, it hits with a force she never expected. Your silence is revealing her mistake in a way no words ever could. And here's the thing, your silence gives her something else too. Contrast. She starts comparing what she had with what she has now. Maybe she's talking to new guys. Maybe she's trying to distract herself. Maybe she's convinced herself that moving on was easy. But new guys don't bring what you brought. Other men might give attention, but they don't give the same energy. They don't give the same connection. They don't understand her the way you did. They don't care with the same intention. And because she doesn't have you anymore, she can't go back to feeling the way she once did. Your silence exposes the truth that your presence was a blessing she misread, misused, or misunderstood. And the moment she feels the difference, the moment she realizes the void you left is not something just anyone can fill, she begins to feel the loss. Not because she suddenly became deeply in love with you, but because she finally learned what you were worth. You never needed to convince her. You never needed to argue or explain. You never needed to prove anything. You simply needed to remove your presence, and your absence did all the talking. Silence teaches value louder than words ever will. When you stay silent longer than she expected, you trigger one of the deepest psychological fears a woman has, the fear of being replaced or forgotten. Even if she acted like she didn't care, even if she pulled away, even if she thought she had all the power, your quietness introduces a new possibility she never ever prepared for, the idea that you might actually move on without her. And this possibility shakes her far more than any argument, any explanation, or any attempt to win her back ever could. Women don't fear losing a man they aren't invested in. They fear losing a man who once made them feel some attention, comfort, validation, excitement, stability, and then suddenly takes it away. When you withdraw your energy, your focus, your presence, she is forced to confront a silent question that grows louder in her mind every day. What if he's giving that energy to someone else now? Your silence becomes a threat not because you're trying to hurt her, but because she now knows her place in your life isn't secure. She can no longer assume you're waiting. She can no longer assume you're available. She can no longer assume she can come back whenever she wants. And that uncertainty is what makes her mind spiral. She begins checking your social media, noticing small changes, feeling a faint discomfort. She tries to hide from herself because deep down, she knows that men don't go silent for no reason. Silence from a man is intentional. It means something shifted. It means he redirected his energy. It means he's not stuck in the same emotional loop she thought he was. And the longer your silence lasts, the more vividly her imagination works against her. She imagines you laughing with someone else. She imagines you giving the same attention she once ignored to someone who actually appreciates it. She imagines you moving on, leveling up, glowing differently. This isn't about jealousy. It's about losing relevance. When a woman loses relevance in a man's life, that's when she feels the fear she hides behind pride, sarcasm, or indifference. Your silence forces her to imagine a life where she no longer plays a role. And for someone who used to depend on your energy, whether out of comfort, ego, or routine, that thought is unbearable. She starts revisiting old messages, wondering where it changed. She replays moments where you were warm and compares it to the coldness she's facing now. And here's where it gets even more powerful. Silence triggers fear because it signals emotional independence. When a woman sees a man detached, she realizes she no longer has the influence she used to. She can't pull you back with a simple text. She can't control the timing anymore. She can't predict your next move. That loss of control is what makes her mind race. She starts to wonder if you finally saw your own worth. She starts to wonder if you woke up to her behavior. She starts to wonder if she pushed too far. Women often don't regret losing the man. They regret losing the attention, the comfort, the emotional safety he provided. And when you go silent long enough, that lost safety becomes real. Your silence is powerful because it communicates everything without saying a single word. It shows her you're not dependent. It shows her you're not waiting. It shows her you're not afraid to lose her. And nothing disrupts her emotional balance more than realizing the man she thought would always care no longer needs her validation or presence to feel whole. Silence is not just quiet. It's a message she can't ignore. When a woman realizes you went quiet longer than she expected, something begins to shift inside her. At first, she may brush it off, telling herself you're probably busy, distracted, or occupied with life. But as more time passes, as those minutes turn to hours and those hours stretch into unexpected silence, her mind begins to explore territories she never planned to visit. The sudden absence of your presence creates a vacuum, one that her thoughts rush to fill. And this is where the inner battle begins. Your silence becomes a mirror, reflecting back every doubt, every fear, every insecurity she tried to bury. She starts to wonder if something is wrong, not with you, but with her. And that's the moment she realizes your quietness isn't just quietness. It's something she can feel in her chest. What makes this silence so powerful is not just the lack of words, but the contrast to what came before it. People adjust to patterns, and she adjusted to yours. If you were consistent, responsive, dependable, or emotionally present, that became her emotional baseline. She didn't need to interpret your messages. She felt them. She didn't need to question your intentions. She trusted them. But when you withdrew that presence unexpectedly, it disrupted her internal stability. She starts replaying the last conversation, reassessing her tone, reevaluating her words. She looks for signs she missed, cues she overlooked, and errors she might have made. The mind, especially one that cares deeply, becomes its own interrogator. The silence becomes louder than any argument ever could. What happens next is subtle but intense. She starts constructing scenarios in her head, not because she wants drama, but because the human mind is wired to seek explanations when faced with uncertainty. Your silence forces her to fill in the blanks, and the brain rarely fills blanks with positive assumptions. Instead, it starts whispering possibilities. Maybe you lost interest. Maybe someone else caught your attention. Maybe you decided she wasn't enough. These thoughts multiply because uncertainty feeds anxiety, and anxiety craves control. Suddenly, she's not thinking about your silence anymore. She's thinking about everything she fears that silence might mean. And once those fears take root, they're hard to silence on their own. The emotional impact deepens because women are intuitive by nature. They pick up on shifts, subtle changes, unspoken energy. And your quietness doesn't feel random. It feels intentional even if it's not. She senses an imbalance, even if she can't articulate it. And intuition doesn't remain in the mind. It sinks into the heart, creating pressure, creating question marks, creating a heaviness she didn't anticipate. She begins to feel like she's standing in a room where the lights suddenly went out. She can't see what's in front of her. She can't predict what's coming next. And that emotional darkness is where insecurity thrives. This is also the moment she realizes something vital. Connection isn't just about conversation. It's about presence. It's about energy. It's about showing up. And when you stop showing up, even in small ways, her emotional world feels the impact. She notices the difference between your attention and your absence, because human beings aren't designed to be indifferent to someone they care about. Silence from someone insignificant feels like peace. Silence from someone meaningful feels like a storm. And slowly, without you saying a single word, she starts to understand that silence has a language of its own, one that speaks directly to her deepest emotions. And whether you intended it or not, your quietness created a ripple inside her that she can't ignore. It's the kind of silence that makes her rethink everything she thought she knew. When your silence stretches longer than she expected, something very specific begins to happen inside her. The balance of power shifts without a single word being spoken. Not because you intended it, not because you were playing games, but because human emotions work in a very predictable pattern. Whoever is more affected by the absence of the other naturally becomes the one who feels more vulnerable. And right now, she feels that vulnerability pressing against her in ways she didn't anticipate. She starts realizing that you're no longer orbiting around her energy. She's orbiting around yours. Your silence becomes the gravitational field, and she feels herself being pulled toward it, trying to understand it, trying to decode it, trying to regain the sense of control she once had. This shift becomes even more intense when she remembers how things used to be, when you were more present, more available, more responsive. She never had to think twice about her place in your life. The certainty she enjoyed wasn't something she questioned. It was something she depended on. Your attention used to be predictable, and she subconsciously built her emotional rhythm around it. But now, with your quietness replacing your presence, she notices just how much influence you held without ever forcing it. She didn't realize how much she valued your consistency until it was no longer guaranteed. And that realization doesn't just surprise her, it humbles her. She also starts recognizing that her emotions are now reacting to your behavior rather than her own expectations. Every minute you remain silent pushes her into deeper introspection. She starts analyzing not just you, but herself. She wonders why she's checking her phone so often, why her chest tightens when there's still no message, why she feels a discomfort she can't quite shake off. She may pride herself on being independent, composed, and emotionally controlled, but your silence exposes a softer, more vulnerable side she usually keeps hidden. It makes her feel something she didn't expect to feel so strongly, uncertainty mixed with longing. And with that longing comes another shift. She starts valuing what she assumed she had plenty of. Your presence suddenly feels scarce, and scarcity always increases demand. It's human psychology. We want what feels harder to reach, harder to keep, harder to understand. She didn't plan for this. She didn't prepare for it. But the moment your silence created space, her desire to close that gap grew stronger. She finds herself wanting reassurance, wanting clarity, wanting some form of connection to break the tension building inside her. But she also doesn't want to be the one who chases. That internal conflict between wanting to reach out and wanting to protect her pride creates an emotional struggle she can't easily resolve. This is also the moment she becomes acutely aware of the emotional weight you carry in her life. Because if your silence can affect her this deeply, then your presence must have meant far more than she admitted. It forces her to confront feelings she may have downplayed, ignored, or disguised as casual interest. She starts realizing that your energy mattered more than she let on. That you weren't just another person in her life, you were someone whose absence she feels in her body, not just her mind. And that recognition shifts the dynamic even further. She begins imagining what you might be thinking, what you might be feeling, what you might be deciding in this quiet space you've created. For the first time, she feels like she's the one waiting, wondering, hoping. The emotional leverage she once held begins to dissolve, replaced by a newfound awareness of how much she stands to lose if the silence continues. And in that awareness, the truth becomes undeniable. Your quietness didn't weaken you. It revealed the depth of your impact on her. When your silence lasts longer than she ever imagined it would, something inside her begins to unravel in a way she didn't anticipate. She realizes she no longer knows what version of you she's dealing with. The man she assumed she could predict, the man she believed she understood, suddenly feels unfamiliar. And that unfamiliarity shakes her more than anything else. Because when a man changes without announcing it, without explaining it, without asking for permission, it forces a woman to confront a reality she never thought she'd face. She has lost access to the emotional blueprint she once relied on. That shift alone is powerful enough to make her feel unsteady, but extended silence amplifies it until it becomes almost unbearable. She starts replaying the last conversations, trying to identify the exact moment where you mentally separated yourself. Her mind goes into detective mode, examining every detail, every tone, every pause. She wonders if she overlooked something serious or whether your silence is the result of a slow build-up she didn't pay attention to. The uncertainty becomes a weight she can't escape because she realizes that the man who once shared his thoughts, his frustrations, and his feelings has now become a mystery. The contrast between who you were and who you are in your silence becomes a loud reminder that she doesn't control your emotional world anymore. This unfamiliar version of you, quiet, composed, unavailable, makes her reflect on how she treated the previous version of you. She starts remembering the moments she dismissed you, the times she didn't take your feelings seriously, the little ways she underestimated your value because she assumed you'd always be there. Your silence forces her to confront her past behavior not from a place of arrogance, but from a place of humility. She begins to see that your presence was never guaranteed, that your patience had limits, and that your loyalty wasn't something she should have taken for granted. The unfamiliarity becomes a mirror that reveals her mistakes far more clearly than your words ever did. The most unsettling part for her is the possibility that silence has changed you in ways she can't reverse. She fears you may have outgrown the need for her validation. She fears you may have finally seen your own worth clearly. She fears that this unfamiliar version of you, the stronger, quieter, more focused version, might be the version you stay with permanently. Because once a man evolves internally, once he finds peace in his own silence, once he stops reacting to what once triggered him, the change is rarely temporary. She senses this, and that sense creates a deep emotional panic she tries to hide even from herself. In that emotional storm, she realizes that your silence didn't just create distance, it created transformation. And transformation is something she can't predict, can't control, and can't undo. That is why your quietness becomes the most powerful thing she's ever had to face.